Welcome to We Politics, brought to you by the Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board. I'm your host, Rob Miller. During this series, we'll be talking with candidates from the two Windsor ridings and Essex riding. We invited all 17 candidates. We will be talking with Sandra Pupatello after a word from our sponsor.
Are you passionate about a particular sport? Would you like to combine it with your education? Are you thinking about a career in one of the many rewarding construction-related trades? Do you love subjects like science, technology, engineering, or math? Take a look at the academies of the Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board. You'll be glad you did. And years from now, you'll look back on your high school days as the best times of your life. The academies of the Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board. We're with you all the way.
Sandra Pupatello is the Liberal candidate in Windsor West. She's making a return to politics after an 8-year hiatus in the private sector. Before that, she represented the riding in the Ontario legislature for 11 years, both in the opposition and then serving in several cabinet portfolios in the Dalton McGuinty government. Sandra, welcome.
Thank you. It was 16 years.
16 years?
16 years.
Oh.
4 terms. In fact, I had 2 terms in opposition and 2 terms in government.
Okay.
So the reason I keep telling people about the difference between opposition and government is we managed to land things in Windsor even when we were in opposition. And so I can't forget those years. We sort of cut our teeth in politics in those first few years. And then by the time Dwight and I were ministers of government, we were just landing, things started landing in Windsor, so.
You decided to run in Windsor West, and after 8 years in the private sector, what persuaded you to make a comeback in politics?
Well, I actually think that people shouldn't just stay forever in government. I mean, you want to give them your best, you want to accomplish what you set out to do, and then I think you should get others to have the opportunity. And at the provincial level, I made a list of all the things that the provincial government is responsible for that impacted the Windsor area, in particular Windsor West, where I grew up, where I was born, where I've lived my whole life. And I made this list, and one by one, we just knocked them down. And we landed all these things and thought, you know what, I had a good run. I had never been in the private sector. I was in nonprofit and nonprofit management before I went into politics. So I thought this was the piece that I wanted to experience. And I did that. I started my own company as soon as I left politics in 2011. And kept that up and kept that going really up until the middle of August of this year. In fact, even though I was, roiling around in my mind, should I do this, I kept worrying, I got to finish my contracts because I, can't leave people hanging with my business either. So it worked out well that now getting that push to go back in, largely because people felt that we do not have a voice here, that in the time since I've been out of politics, we've lost all government representation, provincially and federally. So when Dwight and I were ministers, even though we had opposition, all NDP down here, Dwight and I could pick up the phone and call a federal minister, no problem. They'd call us back. They needed our help on things, we needed theirs. So we really did have that access even at the federal level, even though Dwight and I would bypass local MPs because the NDP really have no access. So let's be honest about who can make things happen, right? And when that all changed after Teresa Perusa as another cabinet minister who replaced me in my riding, there was really no voice. And once you've been in and you know what you can do, people could see what happened when you just lost all that access. So it was enough to convince me to get back in. It's a different level of government, completely different level of responsibilities and access. And I'm pretty determined to show the people of Windsor West that we can have a voice again.
For people who are new to Windsor, you're talking about Dwight Duncan, the former treasurer. During the time you were in the
That's right.
government.
So he and I both got elected in 1995, and we both served in cabinet our last 8 years of government.
What do you see as the most important issue in Windsor West?
Well, for me, it's about jobs. The thing about the Windsor area, whether it's because we're so close to the U.S., whether it's because we're still so heavy into automotive, which is sort of, there's the ups and downs of the automotive industry all over the world. And because that's our bread and butter here, we always need to worry about what's around the corner. Are we stagnating in numbers? Are we growing? So for me, I listen to people, even though national numbers suggest the best economy we have ever had, 40-year record in terms of a low unemployment across the country. People here in Windsor feel like, is it almost over? Is there a risk? And I think we especially felt it during the NAFTA negotiations here. It took 2 years of uncertainty, instability, people holding off on investments, not certain whether they're going to take the next move, all based on whether the Americans would sign a deal with Canada and Mexico. That was probably for us the symbol that our trade relations matter, our trade agreements matter. And to me, to have local NDP MPs in our area, in automotive, to be anti-NAFTA, anti-trade, wanting to renegotiate, even today, in their policies are suggesting they are going to rip it open and try to renegotiate. That position is, it is tantamount, it is dangerous. And I'm calling them out on this. So I feel very strongly about it. Having been involved in automotive as a minister, landing investments, securing investments, being involved in saving Chrysler during the bankruptcy era, the Ford Essex engine plant where they reversed their decision, we had to go find money to help them stay. So, you know, when you've been involved that long, you cannot risk that kind of NDP position, not for Windsor-Essex.
You also criticized Brian Massey during a recent debate about, if I heard it right, you said he voted against every measure aimed at producing the Gordie Howe International Bridge. He denied it.
I can tell
what
you
are the facts according to you?
Well, all you have to do is go Google voting record. So if you go back and look at all kinds of initiatives that actually matter for the people here in Windsor, every trade agreement the NDP voted against. If you look at budgets that were tabled where the Canada Child Benefit, 20,000 families in our area alone benefiting from the Canada Child Benefit, and the NDP voted against it. So I continue to call them on and say, look, just because we're here in Windsor, don't think we can't see what's going on in Ottawa and what the behavior is up there on Parliament Hill. There's a record, and I want people to see that don't give excuses for why. And in fact, just in a recent debate, when I tabled that again, don't tell me you want to help people who are in poverty when you vote against the single largest effort to lift people out of poverty, which is that Canada Child Benefit, and you voted against it. And they made the excuse, oh, well, it was part and parcel with other things that we didn't agree with. You know what? People see it for what it is. You can't vote against serious measures that actually help your own hometown.
Okay, when we're on the subject of lifting people out of poverty, how about seniors? What have you got?
Well, you know, this platform, this is why I think it's important that people see what is in the Liberal platform versus the Conservative platform, because this election is squarely between the Liberals and the Conservatives. People voting NDP down here, it actually helps give Andrew Scheer a majority government, and we do not want that. I fought Mike Harris. I fought education cuts and healthcare cuts so that we were pretty determined when we became a government in Ontario, we had to reinvest, and we did. And I think people remember those years. No strikes. Like, we did a really good job in terms of reinvestment. So I think people appreciated that there was a nice time of investment and building. Now we're on the precipice here of a pretty neck-and-neck campaign between the Conservatives and the Liberals in Ottawa. And we have NDP down here. And that's why I'm telling people, give us an opportunity to secure a Liberal platform, which means for seniors, an increase in the OAS, increases of over $2,000 for, in particular, widows, because they tend to be women who are seniors and then left alone after their spouses die. And we're increasing that survivor benefit significantly. In addition to that, we're talking about pharmacare that we actually started doing the heavy lifting last term. So in the last couple of years, they launched the task force to figure out how to do it. And the reason that's important is we're ready to go. Once we win the government, we've got a lot of the heavy lifting done to be able to get at producing a pharmacare program. So our seniors, our young people, people who really don't have that level of coverage will get some significant coverage around drugs. And that's important.
Is dental care on the agenda at all?
Well, dental care, I think, is part and parcel of a discussion that we have to have, because in Ontario, I was part of a government that actually increased that level of support. So we know that for people in Ontario, there is coverage. People on ODSP, for example, people who are on welfare, there is a package of, for very low income, to secure certain levels of dental benefits. So for us in Ontario, I think people have that level of support.
People are saying in surveys that the environment is key to this election. This is something we haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah.
So what's on the Liberal agenda for the environment and fighting climate change?
You know, in 4 elections provincially, and in all those years that I worked with Herb Gray for many years, since the 70s, literally campaigning, I have never heard climate change at the door like I am today. And I think, thank goodness that people are aware and aroused and want to hear what the parties are doing on the climate change agenda. So just like I mentioned, this is squarely a conservative liberal fight. Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives don't believe there's a climate change issue. They don't believe, they keep saying, we're going to study the science. I want to bring them to my backyard and stand there and watch what happens with heavy rain that never used to happen at my house in South Windsor. And the people I'm meeting at the door today with plastic covering around, with new shoots coming off of the roof, because they've never seen the kind of rainfall that we're having. These are all elements of proof that there is change afoot and we need to do something about it. So in our plan, despite what they've already done for the last 4 years, and I think they've done a lot in 4 years. They've gone to international conferences and laid the table for Canada to be seen as a leader. We closed in Ontario, while I was minister, our government closed 2 coal-fired plants already. We went from 25 smog days in 1 year to 0 in the next. Proof that these kinds of initiatives work. And in this federal campaign, by 2030, all coal-fired plants will be closed, for example. We're going to build and plant 2 billion trees. And I think Windsor-Essex deserves to get more than its fair share of trees for planting. This is one of the most denuded areas in the country, and we did that at the Ontario level. I want to do that again at the federal level.
Is there any one environmental problem in Windsor West that you should be concentrating on if you get elected?
Well, for us, I really think it is tree planting, because agriculture has done a tremendous feat for us economically, right? And there's a reason that so much of our land has been cleared, because we have lots of agriculture going on and lots of industrial. So we've got a heavy industrial base and a heavy ag base, the result of which is we don't have enough trees. Trees are the perfect combat for climate change, and we need more of that down here. So that's a big one. But I think overall, we also have to be part and parcel of the discussions internationally on what all of us can do. Our sources of energy have to be more green, and in Canada, we have that opportunity to slowly move off fossil, because I think everyone recognizes that over time, but you've got to be able to transition people as well. So in the meantime, building a pipeline so that our Alberta economy can flourish, and getting the balance of us moving to additional green energy. So for us in Windsor, I think it's a feat. We're part of an Ontario energy system where the lion's share of our energy generation is green. Nuclear, hydro, and a minimal amount of natural gas.
Okay, we're just about out of time. We've got about a minute left for you to talk directly to the voters and tell them why they should vote for you.
Well, you know what, Rob? Thank you. And you know what? I appreciate the time, and that people would actually be really thinking about what they may do in this vote this time. On October 21st, we've got this opportunity to put a voice at the right seat, at the right table for Windsor West. I proved myself when I was a minister representing Windsor West. I went all over the world selling Ontario and landing items for Windsor. And I hope people will remember that we need to be able to solve problems, not just identify them. So when we had a doctor shortage, we landed a medical school. When we had a lineup at our hospitals in Windsor for London, we brought angioplasty to be done right here in Windsor. These were feats that people said would never happen. And you know what? It did happen. That's what happens when you have a relentless, strong voice that delivers results for the riding. That's what I want to do again. I'm determined to do it. I need your help. So I would appreciate your support on October 21st. And when we get past this election, we want to work together. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
You
today.
bet. Thanks for
Good
having
luck.
me, Rob. It's great to see you again.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
I miss you.
So that's it for this interview. Please tune in again. We'll see you next time.